The lights are off and away they go.
Extremely loose. He's managed to hold on and they get
He missed the complete that. He's crazy stuff.
Side Freitas is on the grass on the infield floor. He slides through. He tags Richard Eck.
Welcome to Oulton Park, home of Round 5 in the Roof European Trophy, brought to you by UGX Simulators, and you're watching it all live on the Global Sim Racing channel. I'm your host, Joe Peak. With me in the booth today is Ayrton Ellis. Welcome back, Ayrton.
Thanks, Joe. I'm a little under the weather today, but looking forward to a great race.
Also, as always, behind the scenes is our director, Kevin Brown, ready to bring you every second of action on the track. This will be our first ever broadcast here at Oulton, but that doesn't mean we're not familiar with this classic British circuit. Ayrton, tell us a little bit about this place.
Well, we are not on the full course here today. We're on the Island Historic course, which has a slight difference. Takes off a little of the early corners of the track and just gives us a little hairpin to look at. It is about 6.6 kilometers long. That is 2.2 miles for us Americans, and 10 corners. And today we are going to be doing two 20-minute sprint races, and the second race is going to be an inverse of the top 10 finishers of the first race, so it should be some good action here.
Absolutely, this series always puts on very close racing. We also have the championship to take into consideration because there's this race and then one more, so we're at the penultimate round here. Kevin Duvel is leading currently with 172 points. Martin van Luzenoord is in second with 44 points back with 128 points in hand. Then Kevin Vakemans is currently sitting in third with 70 points. Steve Clays is in fourth with 65, and Guido Decker is in fifth with 55 points. So if Kevin Duvel runs away with anything more than a 50-point lead after this round, he has got the championship in his hand. We also have a lap guide around here, so why don't we get that spooled up and see what it's like riding around one of these roofs. All right, Kevin Brown is behind the wheel of the GSRC roof, so let's do a lap around Oulton's Island course. Coming down the front stretch towards turn 1, gonna have a really late apex here, so resist the urge to turn in too soon. Passes there will be possible, but it's tough and narrow. Now we'll have the crest of 2, so straight line it and set the car up to brake for 3. There's a little dip there, so locking up the brakes is not unheard of. Make sure and get the car rotated around 3 and get a good exit because the hairpin of 4 is going to be a great passing opportunity. Much more straightforward braking without the fast left-hander of the full circuit. Slowest corner of the track here, but yet again, got to get yourself a good launch. Now we're heading up over the hill of the backstretch, and then it's into the fearsome Knickerbrook. No chicane in this layout, so you're carrying tons of speed. There's no room for error either, so really focus on that apex and don't tip a wheel into the grass. Some more blind crests coming up, but they're flat out, so just straighten these up. You won't see it until you're right on top of it, but stay to the left for turn 8. Double apex here, and just to throw you another curveball, you've got a nice hill to loosen your grip at the exit. Then you're coming up to 9. Here's another good place to possibly sneak a pass in, but it's yet one more late apexer, and the track absolutely disappears down into the valley. Carry too much speed, it'll be easy to go wide and lose control. But if not, you've just finished a lap around Oulton Park. You can see it's a slightly different version of this track than they use in modern times, with the chicanes taken out in a couple spots there, and also obviously not the banked hairpin part of this circuit, so slightly different than what maybe most people are used to around here. Still, should be good racing. While we got a chance, we do want to make mention of a foundation that this series is associated with. That is the ALS Foundation Netherlands, and they do a lot to help encourage and raise awareness and money for research of Lou Gehrig's disease. So if you can, go give their website a look and do what you can to help support the cause. Well, Ayrton, we've seen some very good, very close racing in this series, and I have no doubt that this track is going to put on a bit more of that. It's a bit tough to pass here, but that just tends to make things all that more exciting.
Yeah, you're right about that, Joe. This track is very narrow, but it also has some pretty exciting corners, and I hope that we see some side-by-side action because side-by-side through a lot of these corners can be pretty interesting. So I think it could be a pretty good race.
Yes, definitely one to watch out for is Knickerbrook, with that being a very fast right-hander, and you saw on the lap guide just how little runoff room there is off to the left, and they won't be going nearly as fast because they have that island version of the hairpin, but it's still they've got to brake and slow for that thing, and then kind of chuck it through over that blind crest and hope that they don't go wide.
Yeah, and the walls definitely are very close to the track, so any mistakes, you can really take a lot of damage. That can end anyone's race.
So Duvel obviously has to pay attention throughout this thing. Can wrap it up quite easily, but he has to, like you said, he has to not end his race. He's got to keep it together with 44 points. Essentially, all he has to do is get 6 more points over the course of these 2 races today than Martin van Loosenord does. However, I'm looking at the qualifying, which isn't over yet. They're doing qualifying right now, which we're watching. Van Loosenord currently has the pace over Duvel, it looks like. That could change, but this could sit well for the championship, help bring it down to the wire.
Yeah, and we have also got a driver, Garrett Vandenhoeft, and he's only come to a couple races so far in this series, but when he has shown up, he's definitely shown some pace and has given Kevin Duvel a run for his money, so he'll play a good part in this race as well. But as we just saw now, Kevin Duvel just finished up a lap and went on pole by about 1/10 of a second.
Less than a tenth of a second, about 7/100ths it looks like. So Kevin and Martin are currently trading blows. They're only going to get 3 laps. They are on solo qualifying out there right now, so that's why you're only seeing one car at a time. But so at this point, it's down to who can knock out a better one in those 3 opportunities that they got. And if they go off track, for those not familiar with iRacing, that they automatically do not count the lap, so they can't go off into the grass, even if they don't improve their time necessarily. That lap absolutely will not count. The time will be erased. So a lot of pressure on these guys to perform and make it happen.
Yeah, and the closed private qualifying does help some drivers because a lap will also get canceled out if you have contact with a wall or another driver. So traffic obviously does not come into play. But as we just saw, Martin van Loosenlord now just set down a faster lap.
It's blow for blow between these two. I'm very curious to see how it's going to play out. In fact, it looks like that was Loosenord's last lap, because I think he's exited out of the car at this point. And it looks like Duvel has as well. So I think Loosenord might have it unless somebody else is able to nip him at the very end there.
Yeah, Garrett Vandenhoeft is still on his, I believe it would be his final lap by now. So he is about half a second off these guys, more like 6/10. So let's see what he can do.
And we've got 11 drivers who've been lapped so far today, so we should have a decent field, about an average field for this series. Usually have been getting between 10 and 14 drivers throughout this season. So at least we've got a decent amount showing up to put some action on. And this isn't a very terribly long track, Ayrton. That's sort of one of the things this series does a lot, is they tend to race on these shorter courses, which I think helps keep the action together, since there's not a lot of room to get spread out.
Yeah, the lap times are definitely a lot closer together, but it also makes lap traffic a play. We've seen that even though these fields are small, only like 10, 11, 12 drivers per race, we're still seeing a lot of lap traffic come into play with those back markers. And managing lap traffic is definitely a part of racing that lets it bring it in such these short tracks.
Well, I'm looking at the times, and there is currently 5/100ths, I believe. Actually, no, I'm sorry. There's a little bit more than that. There's 8/100ths of a second, I believe, between Martin and Kevin up at the top. We're going to go through them officially and read them through once it's all said and done. But you can see where they sit right now on your screen as a few more drivers continue to put in laps. I think they should all be very close to being done soon enough. We've got about 2.5 minutes, less than 2.5 minutes left to go in our qualifying. So not much time left for anybody who's trying to put a lap in. Although I do believe it looks to me like everybody's got their lap in. Sounds like we've got Hube de Nuge trying to put one more lap in. He's currently out on track. I think he may have put all his laps in, though. I'm checking right here. Yes, he's had his 3 laps, so he's actually just kind of out there goofing around, it seems. But yes, qualifying is essentially over, so why don't we go through the official standings then? Martin van Luzenoord currently sitting on pole with a 1:18.9, the only driver to crack into the 1:18s in the qualifying. Kevin Duvel completing the front row in second with a 1:19 flat. Gerrit van den Hooft with a 1:19.3 in third. Kjell Petersen in fourth with a 1:19.9, and then Huub de Nuge in fifth with also with a 1:19.9. Ayrton?
Yep. Then in sixth place we have Peter Van Gool. Seventh, Christophe de Viquier. In eighth we have Guido Decker. Ninth, Steve Clay's a little farther back than we're used to seeing him. And then Ivan Olivier in 10th, and Heinz Wemmer in 11th.
Steve Clays did get here a little late when we were watching the warm-up for this race, so it could be that he simply doesn't have the amount of laps that some of these guys have around here. However, like you said, he's normally higher up, so this could give us an exciting first race if he has to fight his way through the field. Same thing with Guido Decker, currently sitting in 8th. He tends to be up in the top 5 typically, so we might see a couple cars fighting and struggling to work their way through.
Yeah, and since we do have just above 10 drivers, we do have 11 drivers. So guys in the last positions are going to be fighting to get into that last 10th place to hopefully get pole for the next race. But if you're in 11th at the end, that's going to be bad news for you because you'll start in dead last.
And that is also 10th is the final points paying position. For those not familiar with this series, they do it Formula One style, where top 10 score points, 25 for first, all the way down to 1 point for 10th. So that's how that operates. They have now finished qualifying and are getting ready to grid up. So let's go check that out. There is no pace car, obviously, because they are standing starts. And Ayrton, that has been such a crucial part of these races.
Yeah, we've definitely seen a lot of the front-running positions change just before the first corner, and even seen some aggressive maneuvers into the first corner. I remember at, I think it was Zolder a couple weeks ago, we saw 3 wide going into the first corner, so it can get pretty intense.
Absolutely. And this is a bit of an off-camber corner, very late Peck's first corner. So these guys will have their work cut out for them as with, like you said, very narrow track and everybody siphoning into this first one. Time is ticking down, and we should be getting lights up very soon. Then we will get the green flag and be off and racing here in round 5 in the UGX Simulators Roof European Trophy. I hear some of the cars starting to rev up the engines. So we should be getting it any time now, I believe, unless we've got a 2-minute waiting period here. I thought it was going to be about 60 seconds, but don't see the lights yet. There we go. All right, lights are ready to go. Red lights up. And there's the green. They are off. Martin van Luzenoord does not get the best of starts. This is going to give an opportunity for Kevin Duvel, who takes a peek on the inside, but decides better of it and slots back. He knows he doesn't have to do a lot to wrap up the championship here. Gerrit van den Hooft did well to slip himself into third. Meanwhile, Kjell Petersen is losing positions hand over fist right now.
Yeah, Kjell Petersen looked on the inside of Gerrit van den Hooft to turn 1, but didn't quite get it and lost speed and let Huub de Nuge get a chance by. Now they're going side by side, entering the hairpin. Huub de Nuge going a little defensive as they enter, and a lot of single file already in this race. Some people getting loose as we see Gerrit van den Hooft going on into the grass.
And that's really hurting his speed, and he's still trying to struggle to get the car off the grass there. And this means 2 wide into Knickerbrook on lap 1 possibly here. Oof, this is going to be hairy. And it looks like they both managed to get the cars through. I'm impressed with these guys right now. So Van den Hooft and Kjell Petersen fighting it out as they head towards this double apexer. And now they've settled it out as it looks like Van den Hooft has got the spot.
Yes, definitely very good side-by-side racing between those two. Definitely some conservative driving at the start. Duvel and Martin van Luzenoord already have a little bit of a gap ahead of these guys now.
Yes, Duvel, as we said, doesn't have to do a whole lot. He could finish second in this one and then finish first Though they would be even on points, it would still keep him in a very comfortable position for the championship. So right now he's just kind of holding station behind Van Luzenoord as they head through turn 3 here. And their next good passing opportunity on this whole track, honestly, is this hairpin.
Yeah, you can get a nice run from turn 3 and be able to get a run into the hairpin, but then again, the track is still very narrow, especially on the entry of that hairpin. Most strips are right there. It doesn't give much space to for too wide action.
Well, let's jump back to Van de Nulft, I'm sorry, who still got Kel Peterson right behind him, and they were really stacking up in that hairpin. Everybody is still very close since it's early days. As we said, 20-minute race around here as Kel goes all the way 4 wheels off into the grass, but holds it together through Knickerbrook. But these guys, and he's got some connection problems there, Ayrton.
Yeah, it just blinked out for a little second. Yeah, it's still blinking out a little bit, so he might have to his connection. That could definitely be an issue for him at the moment.
For those not familiar with this being sim racing, these guys are all racing online through connections to the internet. If your connection goes out, obviously you can't race. So it's a bit, we always equate it to a electrical problem or some random failure that you can get on a real life car. Kel is having a lot of problems with his connection though, as he keeps blinking in and out. But right behind him, we've got a fierce battle going on between Peter Van Gool, Steve Clays, and Guido Decker, although Guido is starting to check out, but Steve Clays is still under threat from Van Gool.
Yeah, Van Gool definitely pressuring him a lot as Steve Clays goes a little wide on turn 3, trying to get a good exit. Definitely a lot of different diversity in lines on this track, especially on a lot of these fast corners, such as turn 3. They're going into the hairpin now. They close up a lot, looking for that late apex to get a run, but Peter Van Gool just can't get that late exit like Steve Clays is doing on a lot of these corners.
Both of them didn't really seem to bother the apex a whole lot, though, but it is very tough. It's a very blind corner with that wall there. Can't really see where it is. Oh, and Clays has a huge bobble coming through Knickerbrook. This is going to give an opportunity to Van Gool, but they'll have to go side by side through these fast left-hand kinks and almost into the grass with Van Gool now into the braking zone of 8, and Van Gool is off, and he is into the wall.
Yeah, it looks like he just skimmed the grass on the entry to that corner. That's just a very difficult corner to go too wide into, especially that left-hand fast speed kink. Very difficult to go too wide.
Yeah, you can see on the replay, like you said, he just put a couple wheels off into the grass. Thankfully, he didn't hit very hard, though. I think in fact, he didn't lose any positions, it looks like. He just lost some time. So he's got to try and hunt down Clays. Let's hop back up front and see what's going on between Martin Van Luzenoord and Kevin Duvel. And actually, Kevin Duvel has gotten ahead, so Kevin Duvel is now in the lead.
Meanwhile, behind them, Garrett Van Den Hoof just made a move on Huub de Nuge, who actually got a bobble in turn 3 and let him go on by. So now Garrett Van Den Hoof is back up to 3rd place, and Huub de Nuge is now under attack from Kel Peterson.
And let's look at the replay of that between those two as we see how that one went down. So yeah, it looks like Danuge just got loose on exit, which you mentioned that big bobble as he went fully off track there for a moment through 1 as well. But yeah, big bobble. Anyway, so now Danuge is under threat from Van Den Hooft. He doesn't seem to be, well, I was going to say he doesn't seem to be doing very well, but he started in 5th, so he's punching a bit above the belt, and it's starting to come back at him, though, as he's not able to hold on to these positions as long as he'd like.
Yeah, but we have seen from previous races that Huub de Nuge, he's a very good racer and is not afraid to go side by side. So as long as he can keep up with Van Den Hooft at this point, he can try to contend for that 3rd place podium position. At the moment, these guys just battling it out have lost a lot of time to the leaders. Garrett Van Den Hooft is almost 5 seconds behind at this point.
Yes, and we've got less than 6 minutes left to go now as Van Luzenoord continues to try to hunt down Duvel, closes up under braking for this hairpin. In fact, very close under braking now as they come out of the exit. In fact, he did a very good job holding onto the back of that car, stretching out as they accelerate away over that crest down towards Knickerbrook. And it looks like he's not going to be close enough to make anything happen this time around. But if he can just continue to do those, get those good exits, I think he's got a chance of trying to get that 1st place back, which he really needs, because even though it won't completely keep him in bay, that's a 5-point difference between 1st and 2nd. So that's going to be significant in preventing Duvel from wrapping up the championship here.
And just a question about Duvel for you, Joe. Do you think, since he's so close to getting this championship, that he's going to try to play it safe? And if Van Loosenlord makes any dangerous decisions, that he would back off? Or do you think he's going to try to try hard and like win this race?
These guys are fierce fighters. I don't see Kevin Duvel holding out because, like I said, 5-point difference. And since he needs to do 6 points or more, you know, even if they switch spots in the next round, he's got to, you know, he's still got to do work to try and complete the championship in the final round. He's not going to be able to sew it up. That's if Martin Van Loosenord, of course, finishes second, and if Van Loosenord wins in the next one, or vice versa. So and it looks like Van Loosenord had a bit of an off on the exit, having some trouble around that hairpin, and you can see the time that this is losing him now.
Yeah, had a little bobble into the entry. It looks like he was in a little trouble in the braking area, but managed to keep it together. Still behind Kevin Duvel within a second, so he still got him in check.
And in fact, they've already left Gerrit van den Nooft about 5 seconds in arrears. If they are only about 6 laps in at this point, so they are nearly doing a second lap faster than the guy in third at the moment. So these guys, obviously, it's a 2-horse race at this point.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at, actually looking down at Huub de Nuge, who's actually now in 8th place all of a sudden. Something must have happened to him. I'm going to go check and see what happened.
Yes, not entirely sure. We've missed it on cameras, I believe. So Huub de Nuge obviously continue to have problems after a very good start to this race. But in the meantime, most everybody's actually starting to get spread out. So really the most exciting battle that we've got right now with 10 minutes left to go, it looks like it's between these top two, Kevin Duvel and Martin Van Loosenord, who are our championship contenders.
Yep, just getting back to you on Huub de Nuge. He spun coming out of Nickelbrook corner and lost a lot of positions in the process. Doesn't have any damage, but definitely a lot farther back.
We'll see if we can get a replay of Huub de Nuge doing that and see exactly what happened with him with that spin and whatnot. But it looks like we can't. It looks like he also had some trouble coming through turn 3 as well, as he got loose once again. His car doesn't seem to be handling very well in that third corner.
Yeah, that might be his setup. Maybe he got a little contact from another driver earlier on. Definitely getting a hit to the suspension can really affect your handling in this car.
Now, I want to hop on board with Martin Van Loosenord as he tries to run down Kevin Duvel here so that we can get a look at what it's like trying to run in traffic around this circuit as he heads through turn 1 here. Now we've hopped on board with him up towards 2 and 3. With 2, just watch how the track dips away here, Ayrton. It can be so easy to lock up the brakes with that little drop in elevation.
Yeah, you can even see some tire marks on the track showing that some drivers have already had some problems in that corner. And just to mention that Kevin Duvel just set down the fastest lap of the race and won 18.7, which is about 2 seconds faster than the pole position qualifying.
Impressive stuff. In fact, it's nearly a second between himself and Van Loosenord as they head down the backstretch. Now, just watch what it's like. And it's still going to be a bit blind. Even though Duvel's a bit far ahead, you can see you can't really spot your braking quite as well, and especially not the apex until you're right on top of it. That's how tough it is, especially if you're running down another car. That's the most difficult part, I think, about this track, Ayrton, is being right on top of somebody heading into Knickerbrook. Just absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, and it's part of all of racing. Driving behind someone is probably one of the most difficult parts about racing, because you just always have to. It's so difficult to see your braking marks and your when to slow down, and you always have the risk of hitting the person in front of you. So definitely a challenging task.
All right, we're going to hop back to Steve Clays and Peter Van Gool because those two have a fierce fight going on for 6th and 7th right now as Steve Clays looks to the inside coming into turn 9. A lot of elevation drop around this corner. He's going to have the inside line, but it looks like Van Gool is going to hold on around the outside, and as it veers back to the left, Van Gool gets it done on the defense. Well done.
Yeah, but Steve Clay still pressuring him on turn 1. Van Gool actually goes off a little wide, too hard into the corner. He's going to lose the position to Steve Clays now.
Yes, four wheels off and manages to hold it together. So Steve Clay's done and done up into sixth after qualifying in ninth. He's got 3 positions down. Let's see if he can try and run down Guido Decker. It's going to be a little bit more of a tall order because he is a far ways up.
Yep, Guido Decker about 10 seconds ahead of these two at the moment, so that's definitely going to be a very difficult task.
So now that that battle is done, let's check on our leaders. Still about a second between these two as Van Luzenoord is trying to hold on to the back of that car. Now, if you were Van Luzenoord, what would you be doing, Ayrton, to try to close that gap and get up there? Where do you think are the areas that he can make up some time possibly?
I think Van Luzenoord is really struggling in the second half of the track. So if he can try to match Kevin Duvel's braking points, as actually he goes a little loose on the exit of turn 1, manages to save it, but that probably cost him a couple tenths right there.
Yes, even before that, at the line, it was 1.2 seconds between them. Now it's going to be even more. You can see just how far the distance is between them. This is what Duvel needs, is to just make this a slam dunk. If he wins both of these, it's going to be a very easy task, because all he has to do, if he wins this one with Van Luzenoord in second, is get one more point in the second race, and that championship is his.
Yeah, and with 11 drivers, all Kevin Duvel would have to do is not finish last place in the second race, and he would have it. So definitely, I think Kevin Duvel has his championship wrapped up.
Well, she ain't over till it's over, and I think we've seen that plenty of times in racing. Right now, we've got about 7 minutes to go here, so less than 7 minutes to go, I should say. So it's getting down to the closing stages of this race. We're on lap 10. And all he's got to do is hold it together at this point. But like we've seen, this track is a very tricky one. It can bite you. Those barriers are very close. So he's got to focus and hit his marks and just rifle off those laps cleanly.
Yeah, as Martin Van Luzenoord just went 1.2 seconds slower in that previous lap. He's been missing a lot of his apexes and braking points, so I think he's really struggling at the moment. I'm not sure if it's tires or he has a problem with his car, but definitely he does not have the pace right now.
I wonder if, that bobble might have shaken him just a little bit, Ayrton. I don't know about you, but you're trying to run someone down and you overdrive the car a bit. It starts to alter your focus. At least I know it does for me. What are your thoughts on, if you were Martin inside that car, what do you think's going through his head right now?
Well, yeah, definitely you feel a lot more vulnerable when you have a bobble, because you realize that you can actually make mistakes and you're not completely invincible. So definitely probably going to try to drive a little carefully, but yeah.
And we're getting Christopher De Vicker and Ivan Olivier also with a battle going on right now. And it looks like everybody in this race is going to score points, because right now Heinz Wimmer had some sort of incident earlier on that he is in the pits. Meanwhile, De Vicker currently looking on the outside, heading towards the hairpin. It's going to be an outbreaking game. Who can get in there deeper? And it looks... We're getting word that there's quite a bit of damage on Olivier, so he must be suffering from that, even though this is not too high speed of a track for the aero to make a difference. And now he's going defensive up towards Knickerbrook. That's interesting, as De Vicker takes a look on the inside, but decides to back out of it. I think that's probably smart. We've seen them go too wide through this corner of a couple other cars, but I really don't think everybody's going to be able to get away with that today.
Yeah, and even though these guys are battling for position, we got to keep in mind that Christopher De Vicker is in the 10th place position. So if he holds here, he'll be on pole for the next race. So I wonder if one of these two guys would prefer to be in that 10th place position to get that pole position.
And that is, that's one thing that we need to talk about with Kevin and Martin Van Luzenoord too, is that with those guys being first and second, they're going to start 10th and 9th. Respectively. So those two guys are going to have some work cut out for them in that next race. Like you said, all Kevin has to do is, if he wins this, is not finish last, but sometimes easier said than done when you've got a bunch of slower cars in front of you.
Yeah, we've seen in the past that there's a lot of chaos in the second race, and anytime Kevin Duvel can be caught up in an accident, as we see a lot of aggressive moves in the first couple laps of those second sprint races.
Well, meanwhile, let's go back to Olivier and Christopher De Vicker, because these two are still battling. De Vicker working hard to try and get by this orange and white car in front of him. but hasn't been able to find anything at the moment. He seems to close up and kind of take a look, but just not have the guts to make some of these passes.
Yeah, and it just shows how difficult it is to pass. You really have to trust the other driver. I'm not sure if Christoph just doesn't trust Olivier that much. Not sure what he can do and what he can't do next to him, but definitely it's difficult to pass on this track if one of the drivers is afraid of side-by-side racing.
Absolutely, and that's, I think, goes back to show as we've got a huge bobble from Olivier, and they make contact, but it looks like De Vicker is going to be able to cruise on by. So I was just about to make a point about getting good exits out of these corners, and then Olivier goes and proves my point.
Yeah, just looking up actually at Garrett Van Den Hilft at the moment. He's still quite a far back distance, but he hasn't lost any time on after the first few laps. He was about 5 seconds back, and he's now 4.5 seconds back. So he's actually gained a little bit of time, but very slightly. But he definitely shows that he has the pace of Kevin Duvel.
And that just goes to show you, we were talking about the starts of this race, is how critical those are. Because remember, Van Den Hilft had a bit of trouble with some guys challenging him at the start, and I think that must have slowed him down. So obviously, if he could just keep out of trouble at the start and hold on to these two, he can start to challenge them for the top spot.
It'll be interesting to see how he does in the next race once he starts in front of these guys. At the moment, we've got less than a minute left on this race, though. This might be over in a couple laps.
Kevin Duvel continuing to lead by over 2 seconds ahead of Van Loosenord, who has no response at this point. All he's got to hope for is some sort of major mistake from Duvel, who's going to get himself 5 more points into the lead and possibly be able to wrap this thing up in race 2. So as he comes around turn 8, this fast double apexer with a big crest at the end, he's just in that car, focusing on what's ahead of him, looking at his brake markers, looking at his apexes, focusing on getting on the gas smoothly, exiting the corner smoothly, and just nailing everything he possibly can as he tries to get this thing in the bag.
And all he has to do is just bring it home, not make any risky maneuvers, not trying to get any fast laps on the last lap. So definitely looks like he has this wrapped up.
Like I keep saying, I know it. Some of it is hoping for maybe we get a bit of an exciting finish here, but you can never say never in racing. I've seen it too many times, and it just it goes to show that patience for that second car really can pay off if you're Martin Van Loosenord of not giving up, because if Kevin Duvel goes off, if he hasn't off, that could be 2, that could be 3 seconds. If Van Loosenord lifts on his pace, that 3 seconds could be a missed opportunity, that he could have just cruised on by and grabbed the win. So it ain't over till it's over.
Yep, as Garrett Van Den Hilft still closed up a little bit on these guys. He's less than 4.5 seconds behind Kevin Duvel at the moment, and he's actually closed up on Martin Van Loosenord, about 2 seconds back from him. So he's actually shown some really good pace in this first race, and I'm excited to see what he can do in the next one.
I believe we should have the white flag out. I think this should be the final lap of the race. I'm trying to get some confirmation here. We're not seeing a white flag quite yet. Kevin Duvel goes across the line, and it should be done this time around, I believe. We've passed the 20-minute mark. Now we've got the white flag out. So this should be the final lap for Kevin Duvel. Martin Van Loosenord has dropped to an entire 3 seconds back now, continuing to drop pace. And in fact, he's starting to become in the clutches of Garrett Van Den Hilft, who's only a second and a half back from him.
Yeah, with the mistakes that Van Loosenord has been making in the past few laps, Van Den Hilft can definitely catch up to him. He's now almost in drafting distance, so all he has to do is just nail those corners and see if he can try to get that position.
Now, it won't necessarily be over if Van Den Hilft passes Van Loosenord, because they still will have 3 rounds left. However, it'll be a much, much harder task for Van Loosenord to try and keep Kevin Duvel within touching distance if he loses one more spot. Duvel, however, heading around turn 8, now up over the crest, up towards turn 9. Only a couple corners left to go around here. He's got to be careful into this last one. It's very easy to go wide and get off into that slippery grass and steer the car into the Armco, but he does it nice and tidy. as he doesn't have to push the car. Now up onto the front stretch and to the start-finish line. Kevin Duvel wins race number 1 ahead of Martin van Loozenhoord, making it a 1-point gap that he has to do to win this championship, Ayrton.
Yeah, and Van Loozenlord managed to stack up second place, and Garrett Vandenhoeft finished out the podium in third.
Meanwhile, Kel Peterson came home in 4th as Guido Decker still has a ways to go to finish that top 5 as he comes around turn 9 right now, and then around the little left of 10, the left kink of 10. And now he comes across the line, Guido Decker taking 5th. Steve Clays follows him home with nobody to challenge him, finishing a well-earned 6th. Peter Van Gool is going to take 7th with Huub de Nuge, now coming across the line and taking 8th. Christophe de Vicker has a ways to go. He's a little bit far back, about a minute behind the leaders. And behind him is Ivan Olivier in 10th. Those two, unless something big happens, are looking like they are going to finish in the order that they are. And Heinz Wimmer obviously is not on track. He is in the pits with his car still getting repaired. So Christophe de Vicker now coming across the line, and Ivan Olivier coming across coming around the final corner with a very badly handling car from what I can see, but now he's finished the race. We are going to go to break and come back in just a moment. The second race is going to start very soon now. Stick around for part 2 to see if Kevin Duvel can wrap up the championship. Welcome back to Oulton Park. We're here for the second race of today in the Roof European Trophy, and this is the opportunity for Kevin Duvel to wrap up the championship. All he has to do is score a single point, Ayrton, and with 11 cars, that means he's got 10 chances to score points to the one chance that he does not get to score a point.
So basically, he has to not wreck.
Yeah, before anybody else. Even if I believe that they still score the points, even if you don't finish. So if somebody else wrecks, then that's the championship for Kevin Duvel at this point. They are going to do a reverse grid order, as they always do for the top 10. So everybody but the 11th car is in reverse, which means Kevin Duvel is going to be in 10th place.
Yeah, this should be a pretty exciting race because we saw some of the guys who qualified are up, such as Hugh Danuge in the first race. He did not finish very well. I think he finished in about 8th place. So he's now going to be able to start a lot higher up and have an advantage over those other guys who are about the same pace as him.
Absolutely, and we saw Gerrit van den Nooft last race had the pace and was starting to run down the leaders towards the end. So you have to wonder, if he's starting in front of them, are we going to see him scamper off with a win possibly? All right, it looks like they are on the grid now, so let's go through the standings real quick. Ivan Olivier is going to start on pole. Christophe de Vicker is going to start in second. Hugh Danuge is in third. Peter van Gool in fourth, and Steve Clays in fifth, Ayrton.
Yep, and then we have Guido Decker in 6th, El Peterson in 7th, Gerrit van den Nooft in 8th, Martin van Luzenoord in 9th, and then Kevin Duvel in 10th, and Heinz Wemmer in 11th, just out of the top 10.
It's going to be an interesting one. We've still got time ticking down until we get the lights up. Everybody's getting their cars gridded up, getting their engines revved, getting everything ready. This is for all the marbles possibly here. We'll have to keep an eye on Kevin Duvel and Martin van Luzenoord to see what their progress is like through the field. And it sounds like everybody's getting revved up. Lights are up. There's the flag, and away they go. Oh, and we've got a car that's stalled on the grid. That was our pole leader, Ivan Olivier. That means that Christophe de Vicker has the pole, but Hugh Danuge has other ideas as he slots himself into first right away.
A lot of action behind them. Steve Clays leading a whole train of a lot of drivers. Guido Decker, Kel Peterson looking on the inside. Meanwhile, Gerrit van den Nooft, Luzenoord, and Kevin Duvel have contact in turn 3.
Duvel was ran into. In fact, he's sitting in the middle of the track as cars try to get around him. Peterson is trying to get away, and it looks like also Heinz Wemmer is starting to get away from there as well. Kevin Duvel currently sitting in 10th as Peter van Gool is the next car down, so it's not all hopeless yet, but that is exactly what we didn't want to see. As Kevin Duvel spins, he must have damage. This could be it. This could be the championship still alive.
Yeah, Peter van Gool went flipping into the air in that accident. I'm surprised that his car's still driving because he did about 4 or 5 flips, and he's on track at the moment right behind Duvel.
So Kevin Duvel currently trying to stay in this thing as he's struggling with his car. And meanwhile, Martin van Luzenoord is still trying to slice his way through the field, currently sitting in what looks like 5th actually already, so making good progress. Meanwhile, up at the front, Hugh Danuge does have the lead. Christophe de Vicker is sitting behind him in 2nd. Guido Decker is sitting in 3rd. And Martin van Luzenoord is in 4th overall. We're already looking on Guido Decker as well.
Yeah, right behind them is also Steve Clays and Gerrit van Nooft trying to get ahead of him, but holding him up a little bit. He wants to get back up and catch up to Van Luzenoord, who is his real competition in this race.
Kevin Duvel is in the pits. However, he is joined by Peter van Gool and Heinz Wemmer. So whoever has the most amount of damage is probably going to be coming out last of these 3 guys. We'll have to keep an eye and see who is going to be coming out of this thing. So it's not over, but wow, we wanted an exciting championship, and we got one.
Yep, meanwhile, Van Luzenoord and Guido Decker got ahead of Christophe de Vicker, and now Van Luzenoord looking on Nickelbrook on the inside. Not the best maneuver, so he backs off, still sitting in 3rd place, as he has a little bobble on the exit.
Ooh, he's got to be really careful about that. All he has to do is get a good finish this point, and it looks like Van Luzenoord has, I think, I'm trying to do the math in my head on the points here. I think he can obviously keep himself alive, but he can really improve his situation depending on what happens to Duvel here. Obviously, this is I'm trying to actually. So the situation here is that Martin van Loozenord does have to finish ahead of him. All that Duvel had to do was finish 1 point ahead of Van Loozenord. So we were a bit incorrect on that. Van Loozenord had to finish ahead of Duvel, which he should do this time, I believe, as Duvel is actually going a lap down. And Peter Van Gool is out, but Heinz Zwimmer is still in, so it's between Duvel and Zwimmer. If Duvel does not get out, he's not going to score any points at all. Duvel is coming out, so he's going to score at least a 10th possibly here, depending on how his car handles.
Meanwhile, Guido Decker in that second place position, who was being pressured by Van Loosenlord, went off on the hairpin. He lost a lot of positions, dropping down to 7th place.
Van Loozenord up the second, trying to hunt down Hube Denuge. I believe he had the pace on him last time around, so this could be a fight for the lead, and this is what Martin Van Loozenord really wants. He's got to get the win, absolute maximum points to give himself the best position when we show up at Spa a week or 2 weeks from now, and try to take this championship out from the clutches of what looked like a sure thing for Kevin Duvel.
Yeah, well, it's not going to be easy for Van Loosenlord at all, because Van den Nooft just got past Christophe de Vicker for that 3rd place position, and all he has ahead of him is Loosenlord and Denuge in 1st place. So, as we saw from the previous race, that Van den Nooft has some really good pace around here.
And Gerrit Van den Nooft obviously doesn't care about the championship at this point. He's not in the running. He just wants to get as many wins as he can. So if he catches up to Van Loosenord, it is a straight-on fight. This is exactly what Van Loosenord doesn't want. De Vicker had a bit of an off, so he definitely had a bit of a bumpy ride after turn 3, going way off and up and over a few bumps there.
And that promoted Steve Clays to the 4th place position. So Steve Clays having a pretty good race in the second race after a poor qualifying in the first one.
Doing quite fine for himself. And I believe unless other cars wreck out right now, the best Kevin Duvel can do is 10th place, because Peter Van Gool is a long, long way ahead. And with an only 20-minute long race, I don't think he's going to be able to run him down what looks like about half a lap length between the two of them. Meanwhile, last time by, it was 2.5 seconds from Hube Denuge in 1st to Martin Van Loosenord in 2nd. As they come across the line now, let's see what the time is. It looks like it is 2.2, so only 0.2 out of him this time, but he is gaining. Meanwhile, Gerrit Van den Nooft is definitely visibly closing on the back of Van Loosenord's roof.
Yep, he just cut down 0.2 in that previous lap, so definitely closing in on him. And if he can just get into drafting distance, he can get a run on him entering one of these corners, such as the hairpin. But as you mentioned before, behind another driver is difficult on this track.
Yeah, very hard to spot your braking zones, your apexes, just about everything. But it's not over yet. We've got to watch these battles and see how they're going to be playing out. I'm going to check around to see if we've got any other close battles going on. Guido Decker is trying to hunt down Ivan Olivier for 6th and 7th, and it looks like he was decently close for a bit, but now he's starting to drop back as they accelerate down the backstretch.
Yep, Guido Decker was in the front running at the start of this race, but then made a mistake and dropped farther back. He's gained 1 position since then, but his next challenge is Ivan Olivier in front of him.
And Ivan, even though he started on pole, we should note that he finished 10th in the last race, one of the slower cars. So Decker should have the pace to start to run him down, as it doesn't look like he is, though. In fact, he's dropping back a little bit from what I can tell.
Yeah, definitely. It looks like he might have a little trouble on this track. He's been making quite a few mistakes, as I even saw in practice in the race before. But just going back on the leaders, Martin Van Loosenlord just closed in 0.7 in the last lap.
So he's doing much better of cutting down that gap. This time we are 6 laps in, and we've got 13 minutes left to go on the clock. So there is more than half the race left here, and now you can see just how close Van Loosenord is getting to the back of Hube Denuge, trying to get those precious extra 5 points to keep himself in the running. And you can actually kind of see that Van Loosenord has a bit of damage on the right rear of his car, So that might be hurting him just a little bit, as Danuge, I think, made a bit of a mistake coming through turn 8 there. I think he went a bit wide, so Martin van Luzenoord closes up even more now.
Yep, he's right behind him now, definitely within drafting position. So all he needs to do now is just get a good run out of one of the corners to get a draft onto the inside line.
And here's the other thing to think about, Ayrton, is when he catches them, if these two start battling, it means Gerrit van den Hooft is going to be up in the fight for first as well.
Yeah, I'm a little...
And we're getting word that we've got a good battle going on between Guido Decker and someone else. I'm not exactly sure. It looks like he's got Kel Peterson coming up behind him, so something must have happened there for Decker, because he seems to have dropped back from Ivan Olivier quite a significant amount.
Yeah, I'm just going to try to look back, see what happened to him. It looked like he actually had more trouble in the hairpin, spun around and just bumped his nose into the tire barrier on the inside. Not much damage, but definitely he's having some trouble in that hairpin.
I'm sorry to be jumping around, but Huub de Nuge has Martin van Luzenoord all over him. In fact, I think the pass might happen here coming into 8. No, he's not ambitious enough. Van Luzenoord decides he's got enough time. He's going to be patient, and de Nuge definitely goes wide, almost dips a wheel into the grass. Now it's going to be a drag race down to 9. It looks like Martin van Luzenoord has the ideal line. He outbreaks him into that 9th corner. That long dropping right-hander. He's got the first position. Van Luzenoord could run away with the win.
And now they've got Van den Hooft behind Danuge a little farther back. Van den Hooft hasn't been gaining much time in these past few laps. Actually, he did gain about a second in that last one. So he is going to have to run down Huub de Nuge. But I'm interested to see if Danuge can stick on to Van Luzenoord and try to make another pass.
Well, he's not giving up. He's holding on to the back of that car as he goes just a little bit wide out of 3. But holding on as they head towards the hairpin, braking very late, coming right up on the bumper, and he makes contact, and he goes wide, trying to hold the car together. That means that he's lost quite a bit of time to Van Luzenoord, and now Gerrit van den Hooft is all over the back of that car.
Yeah, it looks like Gerrit van den Hooft got a little loose on exit. Did not expect Huub de Nuge to cut right in front of him during that hairpin, so he got a little loose on the exit. Just a bit of time, but he's definitely going to be attacking de Nuge for that second spot.
That blue, white, and red car of de Nuge is definitely struggling after it looked so promising with him stealing the lead early on the first lap. He has now dropped back to 2nd and under threat to lose it and move one more down to 3rd.
Looks like Steve Clays is pretty far back from these guys as well in 4th place position, almost 9 seconds behind the leader, so he's definitely lost a lot of time.
I don't think that Steve Clays is going to wind up being much of a threat, but as we've seen, accidents can happen in these races, so Steve Clays can still be in this thing. Martin van Luzenoord is definitely starting to run away now. He's got a 2.5 seconds back to de Nuge, so with about less than half the race to go, less than 9 minutes to go, Martin van Luzenoord has got this race quite handily in his pocket. Just has to rifle off the laps. De Nuge, however, is being closed in upon as, whoa, Van den Hooft makes a huge mistake outbreaking himself into the hairpin.
Meanwhile, there's still a battle going on for that 6th place position. Kel Peterson, Guido Decker, and Christoph de Vicker are very close together.
Yes, in fact, Decker looking very much under threat from Peterson heading towards the hairpin. Peterson closes up under braking, not close enough to make anything happen. He early apexes it, which really isn't usually advisable on that corner.
It looks like he got pretty good exit as well. He does have a little bit of damage on his front. That might affect his top speed a little bit, but he's getting some draft on Guido Decker. Sorry about that. Guido Decker is going a little defensive, runs a little wide on the exit, and they go side by side. Kel Peterson is going to get the run into the 6th place position.
Very nice job from both those guys to keep away from each other, because it was very hairy from Decker just for a moment there as he was squirreling to get things together, as we've got a car off track, and that looks like Peter Van Gool, who is a lap down. He was just letting those guys go on by, not trying to get in the way of their battle. It looks like Decker's not giving up yet, though, as he holds on to the back of Peterson.
And the next car ahead of them is actually Ivan Olivier, who's only about 2 seconds in front of these guys.
And we've got a battle going on for 3rd. Whoa, and Van den Hooft going very wide once again into that hairpin as Huub de Nuge tries to hold him off going defensive.
These guys are still keeping the same amount of distance from Martin van Loozenlord. Van den Noof is not losing much time behind Danuge, even though he's holding up a little bit. He's still about 2.5 seconds behind, but he has to make sure that he gets by quickly so that he can try to catch on to Van Loozenlord in front of them.
You can see he's trying to be very opportunistic here, working at any opportunity. And Danuge, once again, going very wide through that corner, just completely missing that second apex. That's allowed Van den Noof to get right up on the back of him. And it looks like he's not going to try it this time, being a little bit more patient as they head into 9. Focusing on that exit and getting a very good exit out of 9. He might have an opportunity into 1.
He does have the draft. I don't think the front stretch is long enough for him to make a move, but he does get a really nice exit out of turn 1. He's going to come up on the right kink of turn 2. Maybe he can try to get a run out of turn 3 into the hairpin.
Obviously, once again, trying to be smart about this. He backs out, even though he probably could have maybe taken a dive into 3. Oh, he goes wide. Car bobbles, but he keeps it together. Still foot on the gas. Close enough to make a pass into the hairpin, though, as he gets right up on that bumper. And once again, he loses his sight just a bit. And this is the 3rd time that we've seen Van den Noof not quite take that hairpin ideally as possible. So obviously having trouble struggling and behind other cars as he tries to make it through there. Now going through Knickerbrook, he took a little bit of a peek down the backstretch, probably just trying to spot his braking points, but very much hassling Danuge.
And we're going to go on board with Garrett Van den Noof at this point so we could see what it's like with that limited vision behind another driver. As he gets a run, he goes to the right. He's going to get the inside for the falling corner, goes a little bit on the grass, but it looks like he's going to outbrake Danuge and make the position. Goes a little wide on the exit. Danuge gets a little run. They're going to go side by side again onto the front stretch.
Yeah, very good job on Danuge to just focus on sitting in that corner right, but he's on the wrong side. Still manages to outbrake him a little bit. Is he going to get the over-under? No, doesn't quite get the apex. He goes off a little bit wide. I think that is a job done for Van den Noof.
Very good driving from both those guys. And now Van den Noof, they lost a little bit of time, about half a second to Van Loozenlord in front of him. So he has about 5 minutes left to catch up to Van Loozenlord. This is going to be a tough challenge.
And we saw at the end of the last race that Garrett Van den Noof had a little bit better pace than Martin van Loozenlord as, whoa, Danuge makes a look onto the inside into the hairpin. Van den Noof gives him just enough room. Very good, clean racing from both those guys, but now Danuge seems to have not gotten himself a good enough exit out of the hairpin and drops back. We are now on board with Hube and seeing what it's like trying to run down that yellow and black car in front of him as he closes up, heading towards the braking zone of 8. This double apexer that has troubled Danuge this whole race. This time he gets it right, just glancing those curves as he goes, woo, a little bit squirrely off on that last bit, but holds it together. Now braking under 9, staying right up on the back of Van den Noof. Doing a very good job, I have to say, Danuge is on keeping Van den Noof under threat here.
Yeah, he's doing a good job at keeping within that draft, and these guys have now slowed down a lot as well. Garrett Van den Noof lost a good amount of time, about 8 tenths in that previous lap, so he's having some trouble now with Hube Danuge pressuring him behind him.
So perhaps a win might be off the table for Van den Noof, trying to deal with Hube Danuge behind him. Like you said, about 3.5 seconds up to Martin van Loozenlord. We've got less than 4 minutes to go in this race, getting down to the closing stages. Where is Kevin Duvel in all of this? Still sitting in 10th place, still quite a ways back from Peter Van Gool, but he's gained a lot of time, actually. He might just get one more spot if he wants.
Yep, Peter Van Gool going through turn 2 at the moment as Kevin Duvel exited turn 1, so he's gaining time. If Peter Van Gool makes any more mistakes like he has in the previous laps, Kevin Duvel might gain that extra spot, and that will definitely help him.
He's got the time, and I believe he's got the pace, but we've got a battle for 6 going on, and that is once again between Ivan Olivier and Guido Decker. These guys have been going at it for most of this race, it seems.
Yeah, it looks like Guido Decker always gets on the back of Ivan Olivier and then makes a mistake behind him. And that's just a problem with the visibility that we have on this track, as we've been talking about. It looks like Kel Peterson, who was battling with these guys before, managed to get by. He has about 2-second lead of these guys as well, as Guido Decker actually making a lot of mistakes in these previous corners.
Yeah, he seems to be struggling a bit with some of them, so I'm wondering if his handling has been compromised by contact somewhere along the line. In fact, completely decides to give the apex a miss in turn 9. Oh, but it doesn't matter anyways because Ivan Olivier is off the track into the wall, and that was a huge blow. I don't think his car is going to be handling well after that. Trying to get it back into the pits, yeah, it is crabbing badly, so that could be day done for Ivan Olivier, but he decides to stay out, interestingly, and decides he made the wrong decision. So now he's going to exit out and try to get a tow and into the pits now.
And that may give a free spot to Kevin Devell then.
Absolutely. It's going to bump Kevin Devell up one more, who's still hunting down Peter Van Gool, still a little bit far back. Meanwhile, let's jump back to Gerrit van den Hooft and Huub de Nuge, still very close together between these two drivers, so it is not over for that second place.
Yep, if Van den Hooft makes any mistakes, de Nuge will be, but de Nuge looks like he's slowing down a little bit.
Did he get a cut track, I wonder? He slowed down a lot. I think he might have gotten a cut course somewhere along the way.
I'm checking back to see.
Yeah, I was looking myself, and I didn't really quite see anything, so I'm not exactly sure what happened with the Nuge. He just suddenly slowed on the course, and that has given a 2-second gap, more than a 2-second gap, up to Gerrit van den Hooft, which is probably the breathing space that he was needing. Meanwhile, Martin van Luzenoord up front by a whole 3.5 seconds to Gerrit van den Hooft. Gerrit doing quite well to late apex that hairpin now that he doesn't have to worry about anybody else behind him. So let's see if Gerrit van den Hooft can start to run him down, but I don't think he's going to have enough time left.
Yeah, we have about 2 laps to go, and just checked on Huub de Nuge. It looked like he just went a little bit over the bumps in turn 7. That might have caused a slowdown penalty for cutting the course.
So we might not get to find out, unfortunately. One thing we will find out is whether this championship will go down to the last race or not, and at the moment, it's looking pretty assuredly like yes, it will, as Van Luzenoord comes now, hopefully, to take the white flag. White flag is, in fact, out, but we've got a battle going on between Kel Peterson and Steve Clays, and this is for 4th position.
Steve Clays lost a lot of time in that previous lap. He must have had a spin of some sort because his lap time was a lot slower. Now Kel Peterson right on the back of him, pressuring him a lot.
We'll keep half an eye on Martin van Luzenoord for when he gets to the line to possibly take the win here. But in the meantime, I'm keeping an eye on Steve Clays, who goes defensive, but then decides not to. And now Kel Peterson tries to dive into a spot that was always going to disappear. And it looks like Steve Clays is going to get the better exit because of that. And just looking at the front of Kel Peterson, that car is not looking too good.
Yeah, it looks a little bit like a dolphin nose to me, but especially with the blue paint scheme, it looks pretty nice, in my opinion.
It gives whole new meaning to the word piscine when these cars start bouncing at the front there, I suppose. Meanwhile, let's go back to Martin van Luzenoord because he's got just 2 more corners to go, and he has got this race win wrapped up.
A very good race by Van Luzenoord. He managed to outpace Gerrit van den Hooft in a single run-in, and very good run as he comes around the final corner to get the win.
There he is across the line, taking the checkered flag. Martin van Luzenoord wins race number 2 here at Oulton's Island circuit, and Gerrit van den Hooft is going to take 2nd. Huub de Nuge takes 3rd. Steve Clays is quite a ways back. In fact, that battle is still going on between himself and Kel Peterson. Kel's going to get pretty much one more chance to try and outbreak him, but he's too far back at this point. He's got to hope for a mistake. And he might have it as Steve Clays misses the apex. It's a drag race. Is he going to be close enough? He's going to be side by side. He weaves to the left side. It's not enough, and Steve Clays has it at the line.
5/100ths of a second.
Wow, that was a good one for that 4th position. Guido Decker taking 6th, Christoph de Vicker taking 7th once he gets the line here. And he is going to be the last one on the lead lap as Kevin Duvel, who was a lap down, did manage to get that position from Peter Van Gool and finished in 8th. So Christoph de Vicker going to finish everything up here with a 7th place finish. So for the championship, this means that it's a long shot, but Martin van Luzenoord is still in this thing.
Yep, and if something like this happens next race, if Kevin DeVell gets an accident in the first few laps, this can definitely help Van Loosenlord, and it can open up for him.
Like I said, ain't over till it's over. That is just so true in racing. We keep seeing it time and time again. But in the meantime, we are going to close up for today. We want to thank a few people. Also, want to give a mention to the ALS Foundation, and also encourage you to check them out and donate if you can. However, before we go, we want to thank our sponsor, UGX Simulators. Also, thanks go out to Guido Decker. Also, thanks to the software and hardware that we use. That would be iRacing.com, XSplit, Twitch TV, Audio Technica, and AverMedia. Also, thanks to the team today. If you'd like to find out more about the Global Sim Racing channel, you can find it at www.globalsimracingchannel.com, along with archived races and race highlights. We're also on Twitter at GSR Channel and Facebook at /Global Sim Racing Channel. A special thank you goes out to Eric Ekholm, who provides us with much of our music. You can find it not only here on GSRC, but in TV commercials, movie trailers, iTunes, and Spotify. If you like our music, tell Eric where you heard it at ericekholm.com. Additional thanks go out to Casey Lalonde, who also provides us with music for our broadcasts. You can find more of his music at caseylalonde.bandcamp.com. Our next race, the last round in this series, is going to be at Spa. That'll be Sunday, April 13th at 6:15 p.m. UTC. Excuse me, lost my voice for a second. Our next broadcast, however, will be the Green Valley Lake MX5 World Tour. That'll be at Road Atlanta. That's a week from now, Saturday, April 5th at 7 p.m. UTC. Also, coming up that weekend is the Piston Cup at Charlotte Motor Speedway, Sunday, April 6th at 6:45 p.m. UTC. Then, 2 weeks from now, we've got the Enduro Pro Series at Sebring International Raceway, Saturday, April 12th at 2:45 p.m. UTC. Then there's the Continental Endurance Sports Car Series at Laguna Seca, Saturday, April 19th at 10:30 p.m. UTC. And finally, we've got the Northwest Majors coming up a bit from now at Rockingham, Sunday, April 20th at 6 p.m. Pacific Time. But until next time, race clean, race hard, and I'll see you on the track.